Happy Women's History Month from Retrospect. My name is Joy Kuda, and I'm one of the co-founders here at Retrospect and also our Chief Strategy and Operations Officer.
I am Eva Bristol. I am Senior Designer at Retrospect.
My name is Michelle Burney. I am a Growth and Development Strategist here at Retrospect.
I'm Sarah Butler. I am VP of Creative Operations and Special Projects here at Retrospect.
Kaylin Young. I'm an Inclusive Communication Strategist here at Retrospect.
Retrospect, we are a Black-owned creative storytelling and a technology studio who is focused on design, digital products, and marketing. And we use a lot of research, rich narrative story building, as well as our technical expertise to really help and support any sort of brands who want to rise to the occasion when it comes to inclusive action and equitable stories. This month, we are excited to focus on doing one of our internal practices of a retrospective on the month. And with that, I will actually pass it over to one of my colleagues, Kaylin Young, to walk us through what that process looks like.
This is our premium service of reflection. We do this both internally and also externally with our partners to ensure full transparency of what's been successful, what's been unsuccessful, what we want to do again, and what we want to tweak. So we really want to create the capacity for reflection to scale. And with that, this service is most often occurring at transitional stages within our engagement, but we thought it would be really special to do this as a group and presenting it to our community here with you for Women's History Month. Honoring the theme of Women's History Month for 2023, we are celebrating women who tell our stories. So as a company that has benefited greatly from the contributions of women internally and externally, we want to use this month to tell the story of these women who help to tell our broader stories.
Heard a lot of stories across the board, but what would we say are the stories that have been told about us that we feel are most reflective of who we are as women?
I have definitely resonated with the stories that have come out of different legal conversations. Specifically, I'm thinking of the Crown Act today, because without the Crown Act, I know that it's special for us to be able to work at such a creative space that does not limit how we present ourselves when we show up to work. But for a lot of other corporate settings, hairstyles like mine would not be permitted or would not be seen as professional or acceptable. And because of that, I can tell more of my story and just show up as myself.
So much of history and so many stories have been told through the lens of the male perspective and the men's side of history, of stories, and even touching on women's experience from the experience of like men. So really stories that are most reflective of myself, and I'm sure other women in the world, are stories that have actually been written by women. And we can really follow these stories by honoring women writers, speakers, feminists, and thought leaders who have shared their experience or worldview. How can we best honor those who have come before us?
I definitely feel as though we can honor our ancestors and all of the women who come before us by not letting fear stop us from pursuing our dreams. This can be something that is very easily said, not as easy in practice, but I think with practice is another step in honoring them and showing that, we recognize that their contributions and their sacrifices are not in vain.
One way is definitely in saying their names. So I know a lot of times when we talk about stories or what people did, we tend to focus so much on the actions that they did that the names get lost there. But there's just a lot of power in the name and the person behind it and just the human behind it. So constantly surfacing and just repeating the names.
What stories about women still need to be told? And I feel very strongly about this one, so I'll answer my own question by saying that I do believe that stories about Indigenous women, stories about First Nation women, stories about Two-Spirit women, intersectional women still need to be highlighted. What do you ladies think?
I feel passionate about this one too. I think we need to hear more stories about women leading nations. Currently, the women who are leading nations, but also in the past, and their success stories, even their challenges their failures, especially given the current climate. I feel like men have had their turn, and let's see what the women can do.
I feel like also stories about the women who are no longer here, who have been victim of femicide, and in general, women who are oppressed or who no longer have a voice, and being able to speak up on all of our platforms and use the power that we have to really speak for them or try to make space for their voices as well.
Thinking about male-dominated industries, construction workers, even doctors, and thinking about really highlighting the women in those fields who are really acting as trailblazers today and putting a platform behind that would be great as well. What should men's expectations be around celebrating International Women's Day and the month overall?
I think there is always a sense of obligation that women are supposed to pick up the pieces and do and do and do. And I think that it can become not only it's tiring, but it's also it can get frustrating, and annoying is the smallest word that I can select for how much of a burden it can become. So I think for men's role in Women's History Month and beyond, it's really being present and aware of how much we are doing on a daily basis, because there is so much emotional labor, physical labor, time commitment, just beyond that women do without even thinking about it. So any space where you can pick up the pieces, whether it be in just any requests that are being made or otherwise.
Know how to follow that one up. the summary of mine. But I really do think it's a time for men to really reflect on and just celebrate everything that is seen, but also what Kaylin alluded to, all of the unseen contributions and work that women are just making and doing on a daily basis.
For them to really be able to make space, honor, and respect women, also being proactive and not waiting for us to tell them what to do or how to do it, but actually taking that initiative and being able to really make that space without confrontation, without pushing back, and asking for like why don't we have our own space, that kind of thing, and really honoring that this is a space for us and we really deserve this.
One question that I think is really unique for men to consider asking themselves is, who is a woman besides someone that you're related to or a potential partner who you would like to emulate, or who you feel like you would like to become, in a sense, who inspires you? I think as women, we think about that a lot in our options, because there aren't as many women represented across all the things that we want to do. We often have to turn to male representation for how we want to lead any parts of our lives. But for men, I think it's a really introspective question to explore. And if you don't know, maybe it's a good opportunity to educate yourself on women who have made a strong impact in the areas where you want to grow.
What are some day-to-day practices that would make you feel more supported as a woman at work?
For me, it's always hiring women in leadership roles or roles that have not been historically represented by women. It kind of goes to my speaking earlier about stories, but having that representation and knowing that women can be decision makers and can be decisive in business is really important. As someone who suffers from endometriosis, being able to have understanding and acknowledgement for health and wellness that specifically impacts women, I think is also very important and can be supportive in ways that some organizations just simply are not.
Put your money where your mouth is. So pay women fairly in terms of compensation, pay them to speak if you're asking them to do so, compensate them for their emotional labor. To Sarah's point, I also froze my eggs 2 years ago, and an employer of mine paid for that. So pay for the services that are really important to women. And then second of all, make sure that they are heard and acknowledged the first time. I know some people can relate to this, but it's very frustrating to be in a room, say something, and it's not taken seriously or acknowledged until a man says it or a man is the one to re-highlight it. So listen to women the first time.
be like Retrospect. I believe here, we really value pay equity. And also, I have felt really valued having a Women's Day off this month, the women at our company getting to have a day off and not only just time to rest, but being rewarded with a stipend for showing up and being women and being incredible here every day. And I would also advise for people to do the work beyond the boardroom, seeing women as worthy of respect and honestly just as human is not something that a training will teach you. And so if there's any area of inequity or bias, whether it be conscious or unconscious, that's work that you have to do independently.
Just really understanding and acknowledging the patriarchal effects of present day like practices, actions, phrases, and be able to take micro and macro actions to combat that and change the way that we work, the way that we speak, to be more inclusive, more equitable, and just overall more respectful.
I feel like we need to have like a chant or something, like hear me roar. Just kidding, we could cut that part of the recording. But thank you.
I kind of like it.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
And we deserve our credit.